I'm going to be talking today about so-called white privilege. Is there such a thing as white privilege? And can I, as a white person, decide whether or not there is? Can I judge whether there's discrimination against black people? As a white person, can I do that? Is there systematic, ingrained racism within this country? And as a white person, can I justifiably express an opinion on that subject? Could I possibly see things through the eyes of a black person? And do I even need to be able to see through the eyes of a black person to discuss these subjects? Is Black Lives Matter a sentiment that needs to be said and that should be celebrated and protected by society, as opposed to, say, white lives matter or all lives matter? These are the topics which I'm going to address. I'll use as my starting point a hypothetical move to Italy. I like Italy. It's probably about the only country where I'd like to hypothetically live. I like the food, the drink, the culture, the history, the general ambience there, the climate is nice and warm. But I like all those things, so I wouldn't want to change any of them. And if I went there, to be honest, I'm a bit standoffish, as some people know. I probably wouldn't mix in very well. I'd probably keep myself to myself. I probably would only learn a few words of the language, enough to get by. But I wouldn't dream of wanting to change anything there. If I saw statues of Julius Caesar, which I'd somewhat expect to see here and there, I wouldn't be upset or worried about it, even though he invaded Britain. I'd expect it there. It's Italy after all. If I was to change things there, it would be a bit like an abusive partner who married some girl and then wanted to change her after they got married to fit in with his own idea of how that woman, that girl should be. That's how abusive relationships are. So if I was to go to Italy and then want to change it to suit my own image of how Italy should be, I'd be like an abusive partner. I'd be abusive towards their country and their culture and their society. If I brought children up in Italy, I'd expect them to do likewise. After I was dead, I'd expect them to do likewise, to not rock the boat, to fit in. Until some indeterminate time in the future, if my ancestors all stayed there, they would after a while blend into the general population, of course. But I wouldn't expect it to happen overnight. That would be unreasonable. Nor would I expect the local councils, for example, to give me jobs or preference in jobs. I'd expect them to give preference to Italians there because I'm an interloper, I'm an incomer. I'd expect to find my own way and make my own way there. I would expect everything in Italy to be tailored for the Italians. They would have a sort of privilege of being there because the entire society would have been developed and run through countless generations beforehand for their benefit. I would have to fit in with them, not the other way round. That is how it naturally would be. That is what I would expect. That's what everyone should expect when you go and live in another country. There's a huge and fundamental difference between colonisation or migration that's resulted from invasion and conquest, and where the host nation has voluntarily allowed people to come and settle in its country. If you conquer another country or invade another country, which has happened in every race or tribe in the world, has invaded or moved into another group's territory and occupied it. That's just how humans have worked. That's just nature in a way. They naturally impose their ways on the host community. They have to the host community, the defeated ones, have to sort of suck it up. That's just, as I say, that's just how it goes. We have done that in the past. We've gone around the world. We created the greatest empire the world's ever seen. We brought railways, we put our language around the world, we improved their sanitation. We did lots of very great things when we invaded these countries, but we took away from them as well. We took away their culture and imposed ours. That's just, I'm afraid that's just how it is. Now there is a thought that because of that, because we were there, they are here because we were there, which sort of implies that immigration is a punishment for us, which isn't a very positive thing, is it? It's not a very positive way of viewing immigration. If it's a punishment for us for our supposed misdemeanors, as I said, every country in the world is, in fact, every people, every nation, every race, every tribe in the world has invaded at one time or another or gone into another group's territory. There's no way are we unique in doing it, but it's supposedly a bit of a punishment for us for our wickedness in going to other countries with our empire. So it's payback time, which I say it's not a very positive way of looking at it. And you've got to be a bit of a masochist to accept that and think it's a good thing. Or alternatively, with the current wars and trouble going on in places like the Middle East and maybe Africa, it's the consequence of that is that we're having the migration at the moment, which again isn't a very positive way of looking at it. Like, oh, we're being punished for bombing Baghdad, for example. Although most of the migrants that come here from Eritrea, Somalia, Sudan, for example, have got nothing to do with us. We never went to any of those countries in recent years, at least, and caused any problems. So most of the migration that's coming here is purely economic. It's not to do with us bombing or the West bombing any of these countries anyway. So the migrants who come here from these countries, these war-torn countries, or even just poor countries, do they come here and want to positively settle in and mix in to the country and appreciate and relish all the aspects of British culture, or do they want to change it? It's obviously they want to change it, isn't it? They're not coming here as open-handed settlers, as I would if I was to hypothetically go to Italy. They come here and think they're conquerors. They think they're invaders. And some of our own people, not a small number of our own people, welcome them here as traitors, as quislings, as invaders to change our culture and our country for their benefit, instead of settling in, instead of accepting that the people of this country naturally built the place and so naturally are more comfortable with it, and all the institutions, and they're more comfortable with those institutions, and so they have a natural privilege, as is normal, as is totally normal. They come here, they want to change, they effectively think they are our conquerors. In Essex, and these are graves of soldiers from the Essex Regiment, and we have, as a country, as the English, the Scots, the Irish and the Welsh, the people who live in these islands have defended these shores from invasion on many occasions and have sacrificed ourselves in doing that. And this country has been successfully invaded on a couple of occasions. Most famously, the last time was during the Norman conquest in 1066, nearly 1,000 years ago, and also by, of course, the Romans, the Italians that we were discussing earlier. And this, although it looks a bit wiggly, is actually a Roman road, a sort of reminder of that. But we built this country. The fields, the hedgerows, the woods, the houses, everything you see was built by our people to make them feel comfortable and at home within their surroundings. We gave the world the Industrial Revolution, the age in which we're still living now, the manufacturing age, which has allowed the world to live in great wealth. We invented the Agricultural Revolution, which improved crop yields and allowed people to have more livestock and more healthier livestock to feed more people. This is what we gave the world from this country. We gave the world effectively democracy, the rule of law, which we developed here. We developed our own education system, the railways, everything. All our institutions were designed to make us feel comfortable in the society in which we lived. The whole society was made comfortable for us to live in as the English, the Welsh, the Scots and the Irish, the British people, to live here comfortably and at home, at one with themselves, as every country and every people does with their own country, in fact. And people who come here should fit in. If they want to be happy here, they should fit in and embrace those same things. And as some people have successfully come here over the centuries and become effectively British. And some people have more recently than others have done the same and have embraced it. If you do not embrace it, if you want to change it all, you're an invader. You're trying to impose something else on what is already here. You're an invader, you're hostile. And that sort of thing is always resisted. What is the condition we see? We have, in this country, we have white boys performing worst of all the groups, all the social groups in the country, performing worst at school. We have white girls who are systematically abused and raped across many towns up and down the country, where the establishment, the police, the judiciary, the education system, the social services, the councils ignore their plight. We have our history destroyed and mocked and derided. We have our jobs in the local councils held open, and in all public sector bodies held open mainly for the preference of ethnic minorities. We, the British people in our own country, are second-class citizens. That is the reality. We have no privilege in our own country. We have our history and culture invaded, cultural appropriation. We see, for example, the BBC wished to portray Anne Boleyn, the mother of Queen Elizabeth I, one of our greatest historical figures, portrayed by a black woman. One of our greatest cultural icons, James Bond, to be portrayed, they want to portray him with a black actor playing him, which would be totally out of character for the character of James Bond. Usually, it's rather disgracefully white Anglo-Saxon quislings and traitors who make these suggestions, obviously, very often. We see the promotion of Black History Month. We see the appropriation, or the attempted appropriation, of Beethoven, for example, as a black man when he obviously wasn't, or even Queen Cleopatra, who was of Greek ancestry. She lived in what is the continent of Africa, but had no connection with black Africa. I can certainly talk about the opposite of white privilege, which is the repression of the indigenous, the British people within their own country. That is what, in a way, Black Lives Matter, which is of course promoted by the white liberal elites, who hate their own people. That is what Black Lives Matter represents. The people who are privileged, given a privileged status in this country, are actually the ethnic minorities who get preference in jobs. They're treated with kid gloves by the police, the judiciary, the media, everything. Is there white privilege worldwide outside of the British context? The white people who are white, have a dominant position in the world, even though they're very small numbers compared to the rest of the world's population. They tended to be the people who conquered and occupied most of the rest of the world at one point 100 years ago or more. But how is the best way to level this up? Is it for white people to pat and patronise on the head people of different colours to keep up? That's merely perpetuating, actually, if there is white privilege, that's perpetuating white privilege. They're taking crumbs from the table. The best way forward is for any people in the world, any people, no matter what colour they are, is to achieve things for themselves. Red Nose Day, Band-Aid, like Black Lives Matter, are merely taking crumbs from the white man. Does them no good. I always like giving the example of Samsung, the company that I actually used to work for quite a number of years. I can say that now because I don't work for them anymore. Based in South Korea. South Korea, for centuries they were occupied by China, then by Japan, treated terribly like second-class citizens. They then had a very destructive war in the 1950s. The country was wrecked. It's divided still between North and South Korea. Yet they, through their own endeavours, the Koreans pulled themselves up. They didn't say, oh, look, we had this terrible past, we've been colonised, woe is me, I can never get anywhere because of this bad past that I had. They pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. Now Samsung is one of the top 10 companies in the world, and Korea itself, South Korea, is very homogenous as a country and a society. They're doing extraordinarily well. Their economy is rising and rising, although Samsung does recognise it has to play the white liberal game in its advertising. If you ever see Samsung advertising, it's full of the usual woke sort of imagery, because they can see what they have to do to get on in the global economy dominated by white Anglo-Saxon liberals. Instead of the begging bowl mentality, which is exemplified by Black Lives Matter, where they come to white European countries and expect to be treated like conquerors when they are not, they should adopt the Samsung South Korean model, not use the begging bowl, and achieve things for themselves. That is the way forward. Instead, what do we see here? We see our footballers going on the knee still, as if that's going to make things better for them, pulling down of our statues. What is Black Lives Matter anyway? In America, the police do not target black criminals any more than any other type of criminal. That's been statistically shown. In this country, that isn't even an issue. So the whole thing is an invention to try and get crumbs from the table, to try and pull on the heartstrings of woke, liberal, wishy-washy people, instead of getting up off their feet and doing work for themselves. There are, of course, decent, integrated people from lots of different countries and backgrounds who have come to this country, integrated, value what's here. We have many such people in the For Britain movement, and they're very, very good New Britons. That is the example that these others should follow, instead of coming here with their grievances. Anyway, thank you. Please subscribe and share.